Hey guys, it's V-Man from No Budget Productions, and with me today is Randy. Hey Randy, how are we doing today, man?
Hey there, Vance. How you doing? I'm
Oh,
okay.
good. So I figured with the wrap up of Star Trek: Strange New Worlds, kind of a dead zone of Star Trek right now, at least until we get the lower decks coming. I figured we'd talk about Star Trek. Like, what was your favorite Star Trek? What got you into Star Trek? Do you feel like new Star Trek is good compared to the old Star Trek? Just kind of what your assessment is of Star Trek. We usually talk about fan films, so this is going to be a little bit different than what we normally talk about. Do you watch any of the new Star Trek?
Yeah, I haven't watched the animated one with the 3D animated one. I can't even remember the name of it right now. But I
Prodigy.
watched, yeah, Prodigy. I
Yeah.
I watched the first episode of that and it didn't grab me. I may go back to it at some point. But the funny thing is, I loved Next Generation. And then Deep Space Nine didn't grab me at first. I didn't watch it. I watched the first season and stopped. And then like 20 years later, went back and watched it and loved it. Same thing with Voyager. So that may happen with this one too. I may go back to it and think, well, what was I thinking? Why didn't it grab me at first? I don't know. But yeah, other than that, I'm up on all of them. Picard and Strange New Worlds and all of them.
Well, that was kind of my thing on Prodigy. I watched a couple of episodes. Like I really tried, and I couldn't get there. And I think that's part of the it's part of the beauty of New Trek is we get it more or less like once a week. Like they're constantly giving us new weekly Trek, and that's beautiful. I love it. Flip side of the coin, if it's not something that's going to hold your attention, it's like gotta wait till next week. If it was like Daredevil where they give it to you to binge watch, it doesn't hold your attention. Like Prodigy, it didn't. So I know now that it's all out, I should go back and binge watch the whole thing and be like, all right, is this my cup of tea? Because worst case scenario, you waste an evening, you
Yeah,
know, which is no big loss, if you don't like it,
yeah.
because
I'm
I
already
know
paying.
what's that now?
I'm already paying for the cable. I mean, it doesn't cost anything extra to watch it except time.
Exactly, exactly.
Maybe we've got so many shows now that it's easier to be picky. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there is an oversaturation of shows. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Let me ask you a question. Um, you watched TOS when it first came out, right? How does for me, anyone that knows me knows I was not an original series fan. I was more uh I've said this almost ad nauseum. I anything my parents liked, I didn't. So I was more of a next gen fan, and screw TOS. I'll fight. Um, but I do appreciate it, and having watched now in hindsight, I appreciate it more. And there are a lot of episodes that I do like. When I watch Strange New Worlds, I do now look back with a lot of love for TOS. How do you feel the Strange New Worlds measures up to TOS since you were there when it originally aired and you do love TOS?
Yeah, that reminds me of like disco. I hated disco with a passion. Death to disco, right? And
Uh-huh.
now it's like I hear "Staying Alive," and I'm like, yeah. That reminds me of the old days. It's a whole lot easier to like something in hindsight.
Right.
It's when it becomes nostalgic. You know, so yeah, I think it's kind of like that. It's like I'll probably like Discovery a lot more 10 years from now.
Mhm.
But I didn't hate Discovery. I think all the negative talk about Discovery has influenced me to some extent, and kind of maybe maybe decreased my appreciation of it in an odd sort of way, even though it shouldn't. I mean, the heck with what people think, right? It's all that matters is what you think and what I think. So
Well, I know with Star Trek Picard, um, there were things that I liked about it, and
yeah,
and there was a lot more that I didn't like, and I simply took the elements that I liked, and I used those for the films, and I ended up having done that. I ended up not hating it as much as I did, because it was, for me, it was a lot darker of a show, a lot more cynical than I wanted. I wanted that hopeful love of a future that just gave me a little bit of optimism at the end of the episode, and I didn't get that. And I think that's why I'm more drawn to Strange New Worlds. And then when I look back at TOS, I'm like, I finally understand what they were going for back then, because you certainly get a lot of that, especially when you see Pike, doing a pirate impression at the end of the episode.
yeah.
uh, that gets a belly laugh every time when I watch it. It's cute, it's fun natured, but that's the stuff that was, I feel, was kind of missing from Picard, and a lot of that from Disco, from Discovery. But there's a lot to like from some of the stuff in those shows. I don't think all of it's just bad. There's a lot of good in there, I think. And like when you look back at classic Trek, it's the same thing like that can be said about like Voyager. I'm not a big Voyager fan, but there's a lot of bad in that show, I feel, but there's some good too. I think when some modern fans say that, all of this is bad, it's not. Like it's kind of like you got to pick and choose like what you like and what you don't like out of some of them. What do you think?
I missed like the last sentence there. You froze up, but I tell you one thing. I think Discovery they may have been listening to the fans and the critics, because I think it's gotten a little bit better every season to me.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, the first season, it was just like you say, it's just so negative and dark, and everybody's angry at each other all the time, and stabbing each other in the back, and and it's some of that in every season. But I think as it went on, the second season was a little bit better, and the third season a little bit better than that. And then when Pike shows up, it's just like holy moly! I can see why they gave him his own show.
Yeah.
Everybody loved Pike.
Well, I think for Discovery, I think a good I think it was a really good shift when they jumped all the way, like 900 some odd years into the future. Like, to me, I felt like that's kind of what it should have been to begin with, was
Yeah,
give them a fresh, clean start. But um, I feel like that kind of gave them the edge that they needed to just kind of look around and go, "What the hell is going on?" you
yeah.
know?
Jump so far into the future might have been kind of like their own version of Voyager. Being
Yeah.
out there and
Yes.
totally on your own, separated from everything, everybody, no help. You're on your own. And of course, they did find the future version of Starfleet.
Well, and you still have. I
Similar
mean,
to
you
that.
still have questions. Oh, I'm sorry. What's that?
No.
You I mean, you still have questions that aren't resolved. That it's you have the slow burn, no pun intended, of answering some of those questions that have arisen. Of like what happened to some of these worlds. We still haven't seen the Klingon Empire that far in the future. To me, I kind of feel like if we had held off on the Klingons until being that far in the future, it would have explained the look of the Klingons and how they morphed into that weird looking, kind of mud monster looking.
Yeah.
you know I feel like that would have been excusable. Just my opinion.
Chocolate dipped Klingons.
Yeah, like what is what
Pull
is
them out and
that?
they're kind of runny.
Yeah, it's just very strange. um but I feel like with Discovery, I mean, that was kind of a weird situation when they started off, because they had said several times, yeah, it's a reboot, and then they recanted on it. No, it's not a reboot. This is in canon. And then no, it's a reboot. And then no, it's not. And then it's just like I feel like it was a problem of not really knowing at first exactly what it wanted to be, and then no, it's part of the Kelvin universe, and then no, it's not. It's
Yeah.
what the fuck is this? And that's why the fans are so resistant to it. Like, let us know, and then we
Yeah.
can know where to hate it from.
Yeah, just tell us where to get on board, and we'll do our best to get on board. But
Yeah.
just tell us where the train's going.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Exactly. That's yeah. So, which going back to the original, like the original golden age of Trek, the first five series of the Trek films, which ones was more of your favorite? When of course after TOS, because I feel like you might say TOS. But which ones after that was more in tune for you for Star Trek? Next Gen, DS9, Voyager, or Enterprise? Which one kind of did it for you?
I think maybe well, toss is like, how you've got one child, but if you had, say, at least three. I have two, but if you have at least three kids, there's something special about that first kid, because they're your first experience with having a child. And maybe it's kind of like that with Star Trek. The first one that you came in the Next Generation, that's probably your favorite. Or and same with music. The first era that you listen to music to as a kid, that's your favorite. When you're like a teenager, it's kind of like that. So I think probably Toss has a special place in my heart. But when Next Generation came along and it was a little bit more seasoned,
Yeah.
it's like it was written by real science fiction writers who knew what in the world they were doing, as opposed to people who were just figuring out what science fiction is. And they were just figuring out what the show is. And
Yeah.
now, when they started Next Generation, they know what the show is. They know what the fans want. They're old time seasoned, science fiction writers, and had the advantage of that. So I love Next Generation. Also, it didn't hurt any that the special effects were much better.
Oh
You know,
yeah, because
yeah,
you watch those, especially when the Galaxy class starships does the stretching effect and goes into warp like that. That to me, especially as a little kid, that blew away anything they did out of the movies because it's like, what is that?
it's like
Especially on a television budget.
it's like the Roadrunner getting away from the Coyote. Zing. You know.
Exactly, exactly. So I mean going back to what you were talking about, like your first love. That's how I feel about the Next Generation. But my ultimate favorite is DS9 because I feel like that influenced me most as a writer and as a producer because it's that's to me is what got me in love with storytelling because it's like this is serialized, it's character development. I mean my first love of Star Trek is you saw Data, Worf, Wesley, but then you get to DS9, it's like you were talking about the seasoned, like wow, this is what you can do with all these different things. It's like this is so much more. It's just like so much. Wow,
Yeah.
that's kind of what it was for me. But I have to admit that the one TOS movie that impacted me the most was Voyage Home because I would go. My mom would clean the house of our neighbor, and we'd always go over there. And at the beginning of the VHS tape, you would of the Star Trek 4 VHS tape would be the little uh, kind of like this little teaser trailer for the Next Generation. And I would always watch that, and then I would watch all of the Voyage Home. And it was such a fun movie, especially for like a 9, 10-year-old, 8-year-old. And I must have wore that movie out. I just loved that movie because
That's
it was
one of
just
my
such a
favorites.
yeah, it was such a fun movie, and it's still one of the ones that between that and First Contact are my two favorite. In fact, I mean, I kind of put that above just because it's one that Royce can enjoy. He knows, sees a speeding spaceship. He knows they're saving whale. Like he knows that they're spacemen, but they're walking around. Things don't make sense. It's just having fun. It's a goofy movie. When they're running through the hallway, like he laughs because he's, Chekhov's head goes up and he's like, nope, down. And even Royce gets a giggle out of it because it's just slapstick goofy.
Yeah.
And I think that really hit home the accessibility of that movie. Star Trek at its best is accessible. I think that's why Lower Decks uh, is is kind of beloved these days. Like Royce could access that, and I appreciate that. It's not it's not dark like Discovery was in the first season, you know, but I think that's something that classic Trek was good at, was being accessible to everybody.
Yeah, all the original series, like you said, the Golden Age, there was a lot of comedy, but short of being an actual comedy, it wasn't uh, Galaxy Quest. It wasn't a full fledged comedy, but there was a lot of comedy in it. And you remember when the Klingon is quoting Shakespeare, and Dr. McCoy says, "I would give good money if he would shut up." It's just that kind of like, it's a very serious moment. They're being attacked, and he's like making this little quip, and and
Well,
and that's
well,
that's something
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
we've been missing.
Well, and that's one of the things that works about the Star Trek just in general, is it's not slapstick like the Naked Gun, type humor that usually will make it work. It's the situation, and just being human in general. Just like you were talking about with McCoy, where he's like, "Man, I'd give good money if you'd shut up." Like that's a very human thing to say. It's when we're in stressful situations, we use sarcasm to kind of express our frustration or anger, or just like, I mean, it's it's a very personal thing to say. And those moments of reality that slip in, where you're like, "Yeah, I can relate to that." I mean, Dr. McCoy, everybody can relate to Dr. McCoy. you
Yeah,
know
yeah, the grumpy old grumpy old man. I can
exactly.
relate to it. I'm a grumpy old man.
I think we all can. As we get older, we're all like, "Yep, there's a little bit of bones in us, man."
Kids off the grass.
Exactly. So, which Star Trek series do you think influenced you when you first started writing, and has that changed as you've progressed into your writing? Because I know you kind of talk about Discovery, and looking at that. Has that changed, and has modern Trek changed your writing a little bit?
Well, the only I wrote a science fiction story when I was in high school, and it was just a short story about a family who was going on vacation, and I kept where they were going. I never mentioned where they were going, and it just seemed like an ordinary family. They were in their spaceship, and they were going on vacation, and they were talking about where they were going and how neat it was, and the parents couldn't wait for the kids to see it for the first time, and on and on and on and on and on. And then when they get there, it's been blown up, and it turns out it was Earth,
Oh,
and we've blown ourselves up in some sort of a nuclear war, and they're like, "Oh man." Yeah, and they're disappointed. That's the only science fiction I'd ever written until converting that or translating that first short story into the first episode of Dreadnought Dominion. So the first thing I ever wrote that was Star Trek was for TOS, or TOS based in the TOS universe, and that's where I've been since, because I keep writing more and more of them, and I'm working on one now. But yeah, I'd love to. I wouldn't mind doing a Next Generation series, or at least an episode or a film of some sort. But the thing with Next Generation is that bridge is so elaborate. With all the
yeah,
curving fancy woodwork and everything like that. It's either got to be green screen, or it's a lot of work and money and everything going to go into
yeah,
building a set like that.
yeah.
So
It's so spacious, and the thing is,
yeah,
like, it's easier. And I say that I say that not having done it. It's easier to build the TOS sets, because it's hard right angles, and it's.
Mhm.
But when you get to the curviness of the next gen bridge, and all the smoothness, and to make it look right, like the eye can spot something that doesn't look right, or something that looks fake. That's why green screening is is so hard to get right. If you make it look
Yeah.
off, your eye will spot that.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
it's kind of like that Uncanny Valley in 3D animation when they try to get super realistic and they don't quite make it. You'd rather
Yep.
it be not realistic, like Lower Decks, than to try to be realistic and not make it, because then
Yeah.
it's just creepy. The
Yeah.
Uncanny Valley.
Yeah. Yeah. No, at that point, then then you're like, man, screw it. Just paint strings above us so we look like we're puppets, and we'll just mock ourselves so we look like we're doing it intentionally. Because yeah, I mean, and trust me,
Yeah.
I to anyone watching, I've made my fair share of bad green screen films, so I can speak from experience. Like it's terrible when you're like, oh, I think I got this, and then you see the green
You've
haze
gotten
around you.
really good at it though over the years. You
Oh,
have.
thank you, thank you, bless your heart. But no,
I've edited some of your stuff, and the stuff you give me to edit, just pop the green screen on there, done. And some of the other people, their backgrounds are wrinkled, and they have light spark parts and dark parts, and that makes it tricky. But yours is always pretty clean and easy to
well,
fix.
see, that's because of Josh's lights. Like and Eric Morin, he who produces a Planetary Step, which is an Orville fan series. Like his people, they actually got on. I had to send them back and forth the my video when I shot for the first time for them. Um, hey, here's the footage. Does this look right? And they were like, no, place it here, place it here. Okay, send it again. And then I sent it. Nope, a little bit more here, a little here. Do it again. And we actually did it several times, and they were very patient with me. And until I actually saw what they were talking about, I really didn't know how to green screen. But they were very patient with me, and now it's like I love to green screen. But I mean, there for a while I was so panicked because, it's easy to look fake, But that's the one thing I try to tell all my actors is, hey, you've got to light everything behind you, and then light you, because then it's just a matter of pop, you're good to go.
Yeah, it's almost more important to light the green screen than it is to light yourself.
Oh,
It
absolutely.
really is.
No, yeah, absolutely it is. Because you to get that key out, you're absolutely right. And I have to say, your editing, you do some really good editing on that stuff. Because yeah, I can't tell. I'm like, wait, am I really there? But you're talking about the bridge set of the Enterprise D. I have to admit, um, if I ever had the chance to walk on that bridge set, you know, can you imagine just walking around?
Yeah, I almost did in a way. I went to the Las Vegas thing, the Trek, whatchamacallit in Las Vegas. I think that's not there anymore, but that was Next Generation era, and they had the bridge and a lot of different sets and things on that in that display, and so I kind of have seen it firsthand, but not like being on a set,
Right.
yourself. But yeah, that's an elaborate set, and even everything about it, even like the corridors and everything are odd shaped, and
Well, it's
yeah.
almost it always reminded me of like in when you pull out styrofoam from like a computer monitor case or something, or like a laptop, and you pull it out and it's just got the nice
Mhm.
curve on the sides. Forgive my hand motions here, guys. I feel dirty. But like like they're just nice and rounded, and it's just everything. And like I said, as opposed to like TOS, where it's like you've got more right angles or 45-degree angles, where it's like it's very slanted. Whereas that everything's curved. And to me, it's like that would be so frustrating because you get the wrong curve. It's like screw it, got to start over, toss it out, start
Yeah.
over. You know, um, but when you pull out that styrofoam, it always reminded me of like this would make a really great corridor for the Enterprise, because like you go down that hallway and that's kind of like all it is, spray painted styrofoam. Um, but they are very weird angles, but it's so beautifully done. It looks so futuristic.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
You
Yeah,
know
I mean, But that's the thing, though. It's like every generation has a new uh, bottom, like a what do you call it, a new ground line for baseline for special effects, and it's like a whole different level of special effects in Next Generation. Then another level for some of the movies, and another level for the new series. It's like so. I don't understand people who can't understand that and compare each generation of special effects and say, "Oh, that stinks. That's terrible. That sucks," because it's the special effects are terrible. They're not terrible. They were fine for their time, and you just got to go into it understanding that.
Well, if you look at take the Enterprise D, take that hallway, take the sick bay. I mean, we watch all 7 seasons of that show,
Mhm.
but that looks very dated from that time period. I mean, you couldn't get by with making that ship modernized, not with
Yeah,
I mean, you really couldn't. I mean, it looks good for then, but
yeah,
with modern stuff, it looks about as dated as from when from the 1980s. Looking back at Pike era and how that looked like Buck Rogers type stuff. I
yeah,
mean, that's about as dated as it looks. And it's not to say it's bad. It's just we have that much. We have 30 years, 35 years history looking back at that, and about the same as what was 25 years. I think when Next Gen came out from TOS, 20 25 years, something like that. But I mean, you're looking back at that history, so it looks dated. Whereas now everything is, it looks like Iron Man, where you're like, deet, 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 and it's
yeah,
to me, I'm like, man, I don't even want. I'm never going to be doing that type of stuff in my films. I'm glad I'm getting out now because I'm not even going to fake that stuff. Like that's
yeah,
weird. But
yeah,
if you were to try to do that Next Gen budget now, I mean, it just looks dated.
yeah.
And again, like I love the Cage era. I hope I hope we have some type of Cage era bridge because I'm going to go shoot on that because to me there's something that can be said about that early retro sci-fi look. I want the laser gun with the little dish on it where like you
Yeah.
know the real cheese.
Marvin the Martian.
Yeah, yeah, yes. Like, I, dude, I'll even do the little, walking around. Like I love it. The cheesiness of all that stuff. Like to me, I think there's a love for that classic stuff. Because I mean, when people, like when Royce draws a laser gun, he draws that. I think we all have that embedded in our head that no matter how fancy our toys get, we still have that love for classic retro stuff that doesn't quite look right. I mean, by the time we get to space, it's not going to look anything like that, but we still look
No,
at that and go, yeah, we want it to look like that. When we get to space, we're going to have that Marvin the Martian laser on our mantle, just in
it,
case
it,
those aliens come up, we got your number.
it depends. I tell you, if Elon Musk gets us to space, there's going to be some cool looking stuff because he appreciates cool looking stuff. Can
There,
you think about this? When you were a kid and you watched those old black and white science fiction movies, and they showed those big, pointy, vertical rockets landing vertically on the surface of other planets, with the fins as serving as the feet for the rocket, and it lands vertically. And all right, so we left that behind, and we went up through, Apollo and the space shuttle and 2001 Space Odyssey and Star Wars and on and on and on and on and on. And we look back at those and we think, rockets landing on their bottom. Come on. Now he's doing that.
yep,
He's making the land. The rockets land so that you don't have to use the thing one time and throw it away,
yep,
or leave it at the bottom of the ocean, which makes
resourceful.
perfect
Yeah,
sense. Yeah, and saving tons and tons of money, making space flight more affordable. Probably going to accelerate now in the amount of the technology, the way it's going to increase because of him and what he's doing. and he really appreciates that. I think he does anyway. That old timey, classic look. I mean, how can you not look at the rockets
Yeah.
he's building and not know that? you know?
Well, and that's the thing. Like I said, we all have that love for the classic stuff, and the thing is, like, I look at video games. Back when I was a kid, video games was like Pac-Man, Pong, you know, maybe Super Mario Brothers, very pixelated, early graphics. And now they have, I mean, realistic 3D world where you're free roaming, you can do whatever you want. I mean, you can
Yeah.
you can flip through the pages of a newspaper that you just bought in this random newspaper machine. I mean, what? What
Yeah.
is that? Like, I mean, you can free roam in the whole city and do whatever you want. I mean, dude, I can still barely press jump and run. Like, what? And I mean, and here my little nephew is, and he's just pressing all these little buttons, doing whatever. And it's crazy what they can do. And my I can't wait to see what they do in like the next generation. No pun intended. For video games, because it's like, man, if that's how you're improving there, what more advancements are you going to have coming? Because it's just like, wow, you know.
Yeah. I saw a video the other day about that was showing some of the new video games that are in the works that are using that same graphics engine, Unreal 5, the
Mhm.
same graphics engine that they use to do the backgrounds and all in The Mandalorian. And those are so realistic, can't tell that he's not in a real environment. At least I can't. So they're coming out with a new generation of right now. They're working on. I think it won't be long before they start coming out, and those things are going to be just. It would be that close to being in a hologram and being there yourself, and having it all around you. It would be so ultra realistic.
Well, I took Royce and I, or Mona and I took Royce to Legoland a couple of weeks ago, and I took Royce in this simulator, this like roller coaster simulator of Lego. And Royce and I both had the VR goggles on. Mona, you can only do two, so Mona's like, you and Royce do it. I don't want to do it. I get motion sickness. I was like, okay, and I very seldom get motion sickness, but I do get it, dude. I was sick as hell. I felt like I was gonna hurl because I'm sitting there, and the chair does do its little, as you're going through it, and I'm looking all around, and this environment, although it is Lego, and you got things blowing up, and you got things, exploding and whatnot. I mean, it was cool as hell, but it was Legoized. But I'm like, my God, I feel like I can touch this stuff. I mean, and we're going down through the water and through the caves and everything, and just things exploding Legoized. And I mean, and it was so realistic. Like, my senses were tricked. I really felt, and I'm looking all around. I'm even looking behind me to see what was like. And I mean, and it's like, and again, thinking about when I was a kid, you had two square, things and a ball, just bing, bing,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
now I'm tricked into Lego. I'm tricked into thinking I'm into Legoland, and it's just like, my God, where are we headed? If we don't get to Mars by the time, I mean, uh,
Yeah, I played the original. I put a quarter in and played the original Pong in a pizza parlor, and and I was amazed. It was
yeah,
like, yeah, and just in a period of 10 years or so, it just went crazy.
yeah,
And now, like I say, yeah, oh man, it's awesome what they're doing.
yeah.
Um, oh, and by the way, speaking of Legos, that thing you did with the CGI model of your Lego Star Trek, of your Lego ship, that was epic. That was bravo. That was awesome. I really enjoyed that.
I'm glad, man. I'm glad. Like, and Dan Brayland, bless his heart. He's come on and helped me with quite a bit. Usually Joey Benoist does the CGI for my films, but Dan Brayland's done a lot to help in these last few films, and he'll be doing all the CGI for Rain Cross. But he's helped me out especially with the Pretender Constar edition, with the battle at the end of that one. But he's really done a lot to help, like I said, these last few films. But when I approached him and I asked, I said, "Hey, Royce and I, we built this Lego spaceship, and it was a ship that I had built when I was in like second grade, when I was a kid.
Mhm.
And when I gave Royce his Legos, I wanted to show him, hey, this is what Daddy built when he was a kid. So I built it up, and Royce loved it. So he built his own, and it was the same one. He wanted to build what Daddy built. So I kept it and put it on my den desk, and I've held on to it for 3 years now, and I felt what an appropriate place to put that, but in a film. And I thought, well, if I can't get a model made, I'll put it in. And I've had it in a couple of places in my films, on my desk or somewhere. But I thought, man, if I could get this, if I could only get this made somewhere. But obviously making a model's hard. But he had made the model for Threat Level Midnight, the early Enterprise XVC or XCV 330, the early model of the Enterprise, and he built that from scratch because we couldn't find a model that worked for us. And I was like, good God, not only are you good, but you're fast. Like you are. Like, how are you not in Hollywood? Like, he is very good. So I asked him. I said, hey, would you do me a favor? Could you make this ship? He's like, do you want it to look like a complete Starfleet ship, or do you want it to look like a Lego ship? And I said, can you do a cross between? I trust you. However you want to do it, I trust you. And that's what he came up with. He came with the cross between both. And I loved it because you can see enough of the Lego influence, but it looks Starfleet enough where I'm like, and as soon as I showed Royce was like, hey, that's our ship. And I was like, perfect.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you saw it. You saw it at the end of the film, right? I assume, or did you just see the picture?
Seems like I saw it in animated.
Okay, I wasn't sure if I know I sent you the film, an early copy of it. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, it was just a little clip. It just showed it flying
Oh,
across the screen or something.
okay.
I don't remember it being part of a larger film.
Okay, because I know I've sent you an early copy of the film. If I haven't, then I'll get that on after the show, and you can watch it and let me know what you think. Because to me, every time I watch that part of the like the whole ending part of it, I'm like, I get goosebumps every time. I'm like, man, this is the perfect spot for it. But I'm glad you liked it, because see a Lego ship in a Star Trek film, I'm like, that's cool. So I'm glad you like it. I'm glad.
I do.
Good deal. So, well, we got about another 5 minutes before we got to head off here.
Okay.
So before we go, one question that I kind of like to ask everybody: what exactly does Star Trek mean to you, in today's world? Because obviously everything's kind of chaotic and everyone's kind of tugged in like 20 million directions. What exactly does Star Trek mean to you, and where do you want it to go?
Oh man, where do I want it to go? I'll answer that part first. I have no idea. I want it to stay relevant, whatever relevant means, in the future, 5 years to 10 years from now, whatever relevant is then, I want it to be relevant. But I guess that's what, that's the main thing about Star Trek, is that it like holds a mirror up to the current day and says, in a not so obvious way, here's what's going on. But we're going to show it to you in a way that's not going to make you mad. But maybe later on you'll get to thinking, oh yeah, that's kind of like what's happening now. And So yeah, that's just keep that up. That's what I want. That's and well, like like in the '60s, we were just getting over the Cold War, or maybe even still kind of in the end of it. And there was a Russian since World War II, and there was a Japanese guy on the ship, and and Martin Luther King was just a few years ago, and there's a black lady on the bridge, and it's just like, how in the world can we get all these people together working together? But they do that in 200 years, 300 years in the future. So it's like, well, maybe we can make it work. Maybe we can get over our differences and work together. Maybe we can do that. So I guess that's one of the most important things about Star Trek. I don't think about it a lot, but that's what it's always been about. So I think that's what most of the original fans are, why they're not as crazy about Discovery, because they're, it shows women in charge a lot. That's a good thing, but there's not a mixture, a meld of different people, and they're not getting along very well.
I think with Discovery, if I could give them a little bit of advice, not that they ever listen to my show, but I would say be a little bit more subtle with your messaging.
Yeah.
Because that was one thing that I think TOS was a little bit more subtle. So when they hammered home a point, it was, emphasized. But I'd say subtlety goes a long way with messages. Let people draw the conclusions and go, wait a second, they're talking about this, but I think they could also be talking about this. Wait a minute, they're talking about me.
Yeah.
And that's when someone feels like they're being preached at, that's usually the sign. That's usually when their shields go up, and that's when people stop listening to the message. And I'm not saying the message is bad by any means. I'm just saying, like Intendant Kira says, it's precision. It's a scalpel. It's not a club you beat someone over the head with. And I think somewhere along the way, that series kind of lost that message. I think Strange New Worlds has kind of picked up on that, and I think that's why that is a little bit more engaging for someone like me. Subtlety goes a long way. So, but all right. Well, we are almost out of time. So I want to say thank you for chatting with me, and invite you back if you're ever in the mood to chat about Star Trek and you got a little bit of free time. Would you like to come back and chat with me again?
Sure thing.
Good deal. All right. Well, don't be a stranger out there, Randy. And I'll check back to see if you got my copy of the film. If not, I'll send you an early copy and you can watch it. Let me know what you think. And all right. So, Randy, thank you very much. And everybody watching, be genuine, be safe, and keep on geeking on, guys.